Today we are doing a video on strength training, and I'm hoping to basically give you a bit of a kind of key info video. There's a lot of misinformation with strength training for cyclists, and although I think a lot of people are now understanding the benefits of it, and it's becoming a lot more well renowned in kind of mainstream media that it is beneficial for cyclists, there's still a lot of misinformation out there and a lot of lack of knowledge, and people are still doing exercises and sets and reps and things like that wrongly. So hopefully this video is going to give you like some fundamental basics for you to start your progression off, as it were. You've joined a gym, you're not too sure exactly what to do, this video is going to tell you how to do that. Without further ado, let's begin. Before we start, first point I'll make is that doing some strength training is always going to be more favourable than doing no strength training. Even if you're not showing progression, even if you're not necessarily doing the perfect training plan, as long as you're not causing injury or doing exercise with really bad form, then it's going to be more favourable and you're going to be getting a benefit than if you were to be doing nothing at all. So although this video is going to give you some insight in terms of how you should be periodizing and planning your sessions, if you were to go in and not have this kind of information to hand and you weren't doing the perfect plan, you'd still be in a better position than those cyclists who don't do anything at all. And there's a lot of cyclists who are still in that old school mentality of doing no strength training whatsoever. So we're here at the gym, it's 6 o'clock in the morning, perfect time to train for me. I really like training early and getting it done and out of the way. And the other benefit is that the gym is near enough dead. There's no one in here. There's one person in here training. Perfect. So one of the first key points is to always focus on big compound lifts. What we mean by that, focus on things which use total body movements. Things like squat, deadlift, using lots of muscles at the same time. These moves are going to give you your biggest kind of bang for your buck. They're going to develop strength in a holistic manner and strengthen lots of different muscle groups and segment those movement patterns in the way that we want it to, as opposed to isolation exercises where you would just be using like one or two muscle groups or one muscle group at a time. So for example, the squat, we're utilizing something called triple extension, where we're extending the ankle, the knee and the hip at the same time, the same rate. And that is a big foundational movement for anything in athletics and cycling. The second key point is that the ultimate goal for our strength training as a cyclist is we want to be trying to move as much load as we can. That is what's going to derive strength, and that is what's going to be working on the spectrum of what we're trying to develop as a cyclist. What we're not trying to do as a cyclist is increase our endurance performance. We're not trying to move light weights lots and lots of times, because that's what we do on the bike. So when we step in the gym, what we're trying to do is work at the other end of the spectrum to what we do on the bike. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to stick lots of weight on the bar, and we're trying to move that in a very strong manner for rep ranges between 4 and 6 reps. Now, one key point though on that is that you cannot go into a gym as a new weightlifting person or someone who's new to strength training and go straight in at your max weight for 4 reps, because it will ruin you and you'll likely be doing bad form as well. So what you need to do, and this leads on to my third point, is to start easy. Start on light weights, start on something that's very easy to move and work on your movement mechanics, work on your foundation of strength, get all the little kind of muscles which help tie everything in a bit stronger. And then when you're confident and competent lifting, what you can generally do is you can reduce the reps and increase the load. So for example, on a squat, you might want to start at just an empty bar, 20 kilos, and do sets of 15, 20 reps at that, and really work on your form for the squat. And then over the course of the weeks, keep a progression note, start to drop the reps a little bit while you're increasing the load on the bar. And you might get to a point after 4 weeks where you're squatting 40 kilos for 12 reps. When that feels easy, do 50 kilos for 12 reps. And then when you get to a point where you could do more than 12 reps, start to reduce the volume, the amount of reps you do. So right now, going in at 110k for me, for 6 reps, 3 sets. And yeah, for me, that's really, really testing, and the last couple of reps will be very hard. And that's what I need to develop my strength and my power on the bike. My next point is to mimic movement patterns as closely as you can. This kind of links in with an earlier point with regards to the compound exercises. You need to think about the movement patterns that we have on the bike, which is essentially, like I say, that triple extension. So legs coming up and you're predominantly forcing down on the pedal and through at the bottom. So what we want to do is we want to copy that as much as we can. So what would that mean? It wouldn't mean for doing things like hip adduction and abduction exercises. And although that is beneficial, but it's quite an isolation exercise and it's not mimicking those movement patterns very well. So to make time most effective, doing exercises like the squat, the deadlift, and the single leg split squat, for example, would be really, really good exercises to choose. And that's the exercise that you're looking for most progression with. Which brings me on to my next point, which is focus on quality. Once you do build up through that kind of anatomical adaptation phase, and you're at a stage where you're, pushing fairly decent weights relative to you for, that kind of 4 to 8 rep range. You want to really be focusing on quality, and what I mean by that is allowing appropriate rest in between sets to fully recover to get the most out of each lift. Now, a lot of people have too much emphasis on exact rest periods. So they'll say, oh, okay, 2 minutes rest or 4 minutes rest or whatever it might be. The truth is that will be individual to you. Now, I think you should keep a bit of a tab on your rest periods, but equally it should be subjective based on how you feel. Some days you'll need a bit longer, some days you'll need a bit shorter, but ultimately the harder you go in the rep, the harder you go in the last set you did, the longer rest you'll need to prepare for the next set. And what you shouldn't be doing is limiting your rest so much that you're compromising the quality of your lift. That's okay to do for the first few weeks as you're adapting to the strength training, as you're doing these kind of lighter weights, but as you're pushing for quality, give yourself as much rest as you need. That being said, the next point is to pair exercises with. So, for example, today I'm doing a set of heavy back squats with some bent over rows. Basically, as my legs are resting from my squats, I can kind of, and as I'm centrally recovered, but my legs are still hurting, as it were, I can combine it with a set of upper body weights, which I'm not pushing as much. I'm not looking for PBs, but it's working appropriate muscle groups at the same time.
So a bit of a summary or key points using a paper and pen method. First of all, let's talk a little bit about periodization. So if we think about the off season, so winter typically, and in season, typically in the off season, the volume, so sets and reps, will be fairly high. This is assuming you've come into this from a fairly little trained state gym-wise. And then as you progress into the season, the volume will decrease, but the intensity will increase. So in terms of volume, at the start, you might be doing 10 to 15 reps, for example. And then towards the end, that might actually go right down to something like 4 to 6 reps in season. So the volume is decreasing. In terms of intensity, if we think about the RPE scale, when the volume's high, the intensity might be just about a 5 or a 6 on that scale, but that will go up to about a 9 or a 10 out of 10 in season. That's the general overview of how volume and intensity will be manipulated as you kind of go along that line of progression. Next, we'll just look at the 3 main points that I kind of got across. Obviously, I told you 6 points, but let's just talk about 3 here. The first one is just to prioritize compound exercises. So compound lifts are basically total body lifts. So things like the deadlift, the squat, and the single leg split squat. And then for the upper body, things like the kind of bench press and row movements and pull-ups. The next point is to place a big emphasis on strength and kind of rate of force development. So you're looking for maximal exertion. You're not looking for doing multiple reps where you're leaving loads of kind of effort in the tank. You're going to maximal exertion. So you see me here doing leg press. Those last couple of reps, I am going to absolute maximal effort. So I couldn't really do any more reps than that. Now, a key point which I made before is that will come when you are fairly competent at lifting, and that wouldn't come at the start of the plan. The last key point is to mimic movement patterns. So choose exercises which are specific to your sport and cycling. So for example, and I'll give you an example here, if you were doing 3 sessions a week. Session A, you would go for something like a back squat, session B, a split squat, and session C, a deadlift. They are the 3 main compound exercises for the lower body, and those that are kind of most replicable for cycling. Then you would pair those exercises up to make time efficient with 3 other compound upper body exercises. So for example, bench press, bent over row, and single arm row. Then you would have 3 more lower body exercises. So for example, step up, the glute bridge, and the leg press. And then you would pair those exercises up with some upper body lifts. So for example, the overhead press, a lat pull down or pull up, for example. And then you could pair that last exercise up with like a dumbbell press, for example. Again, this is just a real generic example. It might not work for you as an individual, and it also might not work for your gym and your setup. But that's just a rough example of how you can pair exercises up to make time really efficient over 3 strength sessions.
But you may not have time for 3 gym sessions a week. You may only have time for 2 gym sessions a week, or only 1 gym session a week. In that case, your strength sessions will look very different to those who can do 3 gym sessions a week. There's also many other individual differences with regards to what discipline you're racing. A kind of crit racer who's doing a lot of sprints would have a very different strength training program to an endurance mountain bike racer, for example. But hopefully today's video gave you a very good insight into the key principles and that kind of foundation of knowledge which you need going forward into your strength and conditioning programming. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to the channel. And yeah, see you again next time.